at the webinar of Mental Health and PCVE, a Shared Responsibility. My name is Sophie Kuiper and I'm part of the RAN practitioner staff. And together with my colleagues Feline Denis and Maarten Bride, I'm organizing this webinar for you this morning. So what we're going to discuss today, first for the persons that are new to RAN and for whom this is the very first session, welcome. And we're going to start with an introduction to RAN practitioners, so you know a bit more about RAN and also the mental health working group. I'm going to tell you a little bit more about that afterwards. Then I'm going to share some outcomes of the meetings we had last year about the topic of this meeting. And then we have a very interesting presentation of Eva Jimenez. You can already see her on your screen. She is an expert of RAN practitioners, but also of RAN policy support. And she is going to present a paper of RAN policy support. And then another expert that is attending our meeting, and that's also in your screen, is Mieke Boeren. And she's going to present something about getting mental health on board in discussing cases and the Dutch IDU model. Very interesting as well. So I'm looking forward to both presentations. Welcome, ladies, in this webinar. And then, as I said earlier, at the end, we have enough time for your questions. Okay, so then for the new persons in this meeting, I'm gonna present a video about RAN.
We're the Radicalisation Awareness Network, aka RAN, a European network funded by the European Commission that aims to support first-line practitioners and policymakers from EU member states who play a crucial role in the prevention of radicalisation. RAN practitioners creates opportunities for practitioners to share with, learn from and inspire each other, as well as review and share each other's practices. RAN was formed a decade ago by the European Commission in response to the rising threat of terrorism and violent extremism, becoming an essential tool for EU policymaking and supporting and shaping the EU agenda in preventing and addressing radicalisation, leading to violent extremism and terrorism. This includes all forms of violent extremism, including violent right-wing, left-wing and Islamist extremism, with terrorists and violent extremists innovating and adapting to changing events. The threat of radicalisation and recruitment is constantly evolving. RAN practitioners' mission is to keep its members up to date with the latest insights and findings. We're a dynamic network of over 6,000 first-line practitioners working on the front line with people who are vulnerable to radicalisation or already radicalised. Our practitioners include civil society representatives, youth workers, teachers, local authorities, police officers, prison officers, probation officers, counsellors and many more professionals that make a difference in this field. RAN brings these practitioners together from all over Europe to exchange first-hand experiences, insights, knowledge, ideas and good practices on key themes in the field. We utilise this incredible expertise to help equip the larger community of practitioners, organising meetings, webinars, conferences and many other events and activities, helping practitioners become more empowered to improve their own practice. RAN Practitioners has 9 working groups covering different fields of work that reflect the wide range of practitioners' experience. There are groups on youth and education, families, communities and social care, mental health, local authorities, police and law enforcement, prisons, rehabilitation, victims of terrorism and communications and narratives. These groups of practitioners meet online and offline throughout the year with their own peers, as well as across different sectors. The lessons learned and recommendations are captured in a series of papers, including practical manuals and fact books that explore some of the key topics in even greater detail. At RAN Practitioners, we have a wealth of online resources. For example, the RAN Collection is an online database of over 200 good and inspiring practices which practitioners can adopt and adapt to their local context and can identify partners to exchange experiences and work with. Find out more about RAN Practitioners, our working groups and how to get involved on the RAN Practitioners website. And keep up to date with the latest news and information by registering for the monthly newsletter, the RAN Practitioners Update, or by following RAN on social media.
Okay, so as presented in this in this overview and this video of RAN, we have 9 different working groups, and one of these working groups is the mental health working group. That's a working group that I'm part of, as well as Feline. Eva, that's here as a presenter of today, she is the working group leader of this working group. And from this working group, we're also organizing this webinar today. The focus of this working group is on the role of practitioners of the mental health sector in the prevention and countering of violent extremism. So persons that are often part of our meetings are psychologists or psychiatrists, psychiatric nurses, and some of the important topics we have discussed in the last couple of years are about the role of mental health care in the de-radicalization, disengagement, and reintegration of extremist offenders, the safeguarding of mental health professionals, very important topic as well, the role of mental health issues and or illness in radicalization, and the one that's the topic of today, the cooperation between the mental health and security sector. I think a document that's really important or really can be really interesting for you is a handbook that has been written about extremism, radicalization, and mental health. And within this handbook, and you can scan it via the QR code, but it's also on our website. In this handbook, a couple of mental health disorders are being discussed, and also the way in which this mental health disorder can make a person vulnerable for radicalization, or the way it may protect a person from radicalization. And the handbook also discussed that when mental health issues and signs of radicalization are present, how you can act on it as a professional. So really important document to have a look at it one time. And then the topic of today, this year we had 2 different meetings. In the beginning of the year, we had a working group meeting with the mental health working group about the topic of cooperation between the mental health and the security sector. And a couple of weeks ago, we had a cross-cutting meeting. So that was a bit of a more bigger meeting, also with RAND policy support included, so with policymakers and with researchers as well. And during this meeting, we discussed the importance of the cooperation between the 2 domains and also the challenges that are present. And what I'm going to share with you is why is it so important to cooperate between these 2 sectors, and what are the challenges that are still present. So a brief summary of the outcomes of these 2 meetings we had. So why is it so important to cooperate, and why is it that we had 2 meetings on this topic and then today this webinar as well? If you're looking in the last number of attacks, and something that has also been written in the annual report of Europol, is that we have an increasing number of terrorist attacks by lone actors, and whether or not they were part of an online network, the trigger to act was an individual decision. If you have a look at these cases, of these lone actor cases, there were multiple triggers present, but it also seemed that mental health issues played a role in the trigger to act out. We've discussed this also during the last meetings we had, and if we're looking at the working group meeting earlier this year, a lot of practitioners shared that they were noticing this trend as well. I think important to mention here is that there's no extensive research on this yet. So it's a trend that practitioners see, and also that we've seen when looking at the last number of attacks. If you're speaking of mental health and radicalization, it's very important to keep in mind that the relation between mental health and radicalization is very complex, and there is a dynamic interplay between these 2 factors. As also was in the last couple of lone actors case, there are always more triggers present next to mental health issues. So for example, social isolation, peer pressure, or the need for personal belonging or significance. And all these triggers play a role in the process of radicalization. But if there are mental health issues present and also signs of radicalization, because this relation is so complex, it's really important that early on you have intersectoral collaboration between different parties, so between mental health and the security sector, so that all information that is relevant in the case is being integrated in a very early stage, so that we can, or you can estimate the risk accurately. So is there a risk present within this person that he's going to act out, or are the mental health issues serving as a protective factor in this case? So for example, the person has a depression and isn't able to come out his bed during the day. So the possibility or the chance for him to act out on it is in this case not that high. So it helps estimate the risk, but it can also help mental health practitioners to create a tailor-made intervention. And with this intervention, they can protect the individual, but also safeguarding the environment for a possible attack. Okay. And then, unfortunately, there are still some challenges present within this cooperation. And we've discussed a lot of challenges during our latest meetings. But to make it a bit comprehensible for you doing this webinar, we selected 5 of the challenges that were most discussed during the meetings. And the first one is that within mental health professionals, there is still a lack of knowledge about legislation and about the information that can be shared with other parties. And I think that one factor that also plays a role in this is that obviously the relationship between a mental health professional and an individual and the trust in this relation is very important, and that a professional doesn't want to harm this bond of trust by sharing information with other parties. So this is something we still need to work on, and also create clear boundaries on what can be shared in what kind of situations with other parties. When asking them, they both had the feeling that the other party doesn't want to share information. And because of that feeling, there is a lack of trust. Another one is not talking the same language. So if you're looking at this point, is that mental health professionals are having the feeling that, for example, police officers are very narrow-minded, and they have another goal when speaking about an individual. And then again, the police officer has the feeling that the mental health professional is not sharing all the information. So they're sitting around the table with another goal in mind. Well, in the end, most of the times their goals are the same. And then the fourth point, a lack of knowledge about each other's role and responsibility. So what can I expect from you? What is your responsibility? And what are the limits of your responsibility? And what can I expect from you? And what we saw during this discussion was that some mental health professionals said that oftentimes they have, for example, police officer asking for information about the individual, when the mental health professional has the feeling that the information that is being asked is not relevant for the case. So that doesn't help me sharing information, but it gives the police officer the feeling that, again, the mental health professional doesn't want to share all the information that for the feeling from the police officer is relevant to the case. And then the last point, not having the right tools and knowledge to identify mental health problems and to act on them. This was a point that was often mentioned from persons that were working in prisons. So, for example, prison staff isn't having the right tools to identify cases where there are mental health problems present. And because they are not recognizing it, they also don't know or they don't act on it, or if they recognize it, they're not always sure on how to act on it. So they said we still need a lot of training about recognizing mental health issues. So that's a challenge that still needs a lot of attention. So very brief summary of everything we have discussed during the 2 meetings. As I already said, it's not everything we have discussed. From the meeting in March, there's already a conclusion paper online that's sharing more of these challenges and also some solutions the professionals mentioned. And the conclusion paper of the last cross-cutting meeting will be shared in a couple of weeks. Okay, so this was it for the information of the meetings. And now we have a presentation, the first one of Eva Jimenez, As I already said, Eva is a RAN policy support expert and also the leader of the working group that Feline and I'm part of. Expert on this topic, knows a lot about it, and I'm only sharing the expertise now or her role within RAN, but she also does a lot of other things, and she's going to share with us the RAN policy support review paper about mental health issues and radicalization. So
I will explain you the main ideas of this paper, a quarterly research review. And let me please tell you what is a QRR, because even before to produce that one, I didn't know anything about that kind of paper. So this quarterly research review summarizes the state of the art of research in relation to the topic of mental health issues and radicalization. And the aim of this QRR, of this paper, is to provide to policymakers, to the member state representative, with a compilation of the most relevant publication and the key messages, the core findings concerning some specific issues or topic. In this case, concerning mental health issues and the radicalization continue in supporting them or facilitating them in their decision-making or in their policies. As you see in this slide, the member states who requested these specific topics were Denmark, Estonia, Spain, France, and Romania. Quite a big number, because we normally receive requests from the member state about 1 or 2 member states, no more. But this is something that show how important this topic is, not only for the Commission, for all the member states as well, even knowing that the representative of the member state, they don't belong to the mental health professional side. So this is something that even has not been only included in the orientation strategy for 2024, but was even highlighted during the latest meeting that we have in October in Brussels, when deciding the main topic that should be discussed in the next agenda. Next, please. Okay, great. So this study was planned to meet all the criteria outlined by the European Commission, which are the following. There is a range of paper. There is a range in between 9 and 15 papers that should be introduced, should be included in all the QRR. And due to the relevance of the topic and the number of papers, the very good paper that I found when I started searching them, I opted for the highest number criteria. So a total of 15 relevant sources are the one who has been introduced in this paper. Next, please. Thank you. Another criteria is the need to quote open sources paper that has been published via reputable outlets, including RAN practitioners paper, of course, to make sure, to ensure the validity and the rigor of the research. Mainly because this is a review, a study of the most relevant international literature. This is not a mapping. We are not collecting what are the policies that the member state have implemented right now. This is just collecting the ideas on different and international papers. The timing rate is the latest 5 years. So this paper was produced last year. So from 2018 until 2022. Next. Okay. This is one of the issues that I'm more proud about, because I wanted to introduce as well not only the national aspect but the local aspect, because there are so many things that have been doing in a community level about the coordination in between different professionals. Doesn't matter if the professional belong to the mental health issues or another. I wanted to receive information from local and community aspects. So I decided, next please, I decided to study paper in 6 different languages, in the languages that I can speak, understand, even just read, which is Spanish, English, Italian, French, and Portuguese, and the Dutch. So this paper is in Dutch. I didn't understand any single word in Dutch. Maybe this paper helped me to understand a bit. But one of the most interesting paper about the collaboration of mental health and security professionals was in Dutch. So I decided to introduce as well. Next. The 3 subtopics that make up this paper. The first and the one belong to other areas, so I'm not going to discuss anything about that. And the second one is the one who was mainly related to the cooperation in between mental health professionals and security forces. Next. Oops, so sorry. Okay. With this slide, I wanted to show you the number of papers that I found for each particular topic. Even being honest, the blue rounds, the blue barbets could be even bigger. As you see, in the yellow one is the paper that I found about the cooperation of security forces. In fact, only one paper was mainly discussed these issues, the Dutch one that were, as I mentioned before. But and even you can see as well that many of the article are, so there's was a bit difficulty to differentiate the issues associated with one of the other section. But however, this allows us to show how this clinical and social factor can be associated, can have the same implication, even the same etiology sometimes, and need to be jointly affect to different groups. Next, please. Yeah. This, rather than being a limitation, could be considered as a characteristic in itself to the aspect of the psychological and emotional health, insofar as these issues, the clinical, the social, the emotional factor, should be addressed together as part of the mental health population, mental health vulnerable population. I mean, the mental health should be defined as a continuum of various clinical, emotional, and social conditions, and they should be studied together, since understanding the mental health as a sliding scale will allow us to take a broader spectrum of radicalized people into consideration, and especially because we are going to lose the full pictures of the mental health issues. As you can see in this slide, we are mainly focused in the peak of the iceberg. We can lose the general image, especially because we need to stop thinking that mental health issues is just related with personality disorders or with mental illnesses. It's true that, for instance, as Sophie has mentioned at the very beginning, in the case of the lone actor figure, there are so many mental health issues involved. But the rest of the people that I remember was one of the main conclusions in the meeting that we had in March in The Hague, where Mickey was a presentation as well. Most of the people from the security forces that were attending that meeting, they told us that most of 90% of the cases that they have to face and cope with daily, they have some mental issues. So we need to consider as well the isolation, the alienation, the frustration, feeling outsider, feeling that they don't belong in any kind of society group, the lack of identity, the lack of social skill, so many vicarious trauma. This is mental health as well. So even if we are not going to find any personality disorder as schizophrenia or psychosis, we need to stop thinking that mental health issues in connection with radicalization process is just this kind of personality disorder. So we need to open a broader spectrum on mental health areas. Next, please. Yeah, especially because when we speak about the push and pull factors, the indicator of radicalization process. So as a consequence of the idea that I mentioned first, the current indicator and guideline of PCV should be able to make a clear distinction in between the general indicator of vulnerability as a whole and the indicator of vulnerability to radicalization and to vulnerability to involvement in a terrorist violence. Starting with the point of recognizing that being vulnerable to radicalization means being socially, emotionally, and cognitively susceptible of radical changes. Next, please. Yeah. Sophie has mentioned as well the idea and the fact, in fact, that lone actors figure has so many mental issues, even personality disorders. So almost all the paper made some specific mention of the figure of these long-actor terrorists. So therefore, if there is a specific figure, or if there is a scenario in which the collaboration is paramount and is crucial today, is with long terrorist actors. So this is the case of the detention of management of the condition and factor that are making some people who are vulnerable to the radical changes to decide to cross the line and passing from have radical ideas to violent behaviors and actions. Next, please. This is one of the key points that the different paper has made this paper highlight about the three aspects. I will very quickly. So the prevalent rates of mental health difficulty are not relevant among terrorist population in compare with the normal population and compare with other terrorist groups. Otherwise, long-actor terrorists have a higher rate of difficulty than normal population and other terrorist population. But remember that this is just kind of one of the feedback that we have to deal with. So we cannot forget those people who right now are in the process of being radicalized, or those people who are never going to pass the line and they will decide to commit some terrorist action or attack. So the prevention is the key, and even consider that the prevalence rates of mental health is not very high. We need to start in training the people, especially the security forces experts, to detect those signals that we really know that can be maybe the precursor to be involving in this process of radicalization. Because mental health factors are both precursors to, but the consequences as well of this process of radicalization. So the mental health factor can appear at the end of the road, not at the very beginning. Even the radicalization process can be modulating as well for mental health issues. So someone who doesn't have any kind of problem with personality disorder or with mental illnesses can have some kind of feeling of isolation, frustration, anger, depression, anxiety, etc. And this factor can modulate that person in order to decide, I need to do something else, especially in this denial narrative and the new narrative that we are living in the latest years. And about the young people, all that psychological, emotional factors in this vulnerable people, young population, those who are involved in the radicalization and terrorist process, depending on the local and the family context, mainly. Of course, there are so many other factors who are taking some kind of part, but depending mainly in the local and family context. And as we all know, the local is mainly under the umbrella of the security forces, especially the community policing. The policing who are working in those communities, who are having a contact with them and having deciding what should be the factor who will be detected. And the family context is mainly under the umbrella, under the control of mental health expert. And when I say mental health expert, I'm a very broader idea. So not only psychologists, psychiatry, social workers as well, youth worker, educators, nurses, etc. So it is a must that we need to work together if we wanted to prevent this process of radicalization on young individuals. The multi-agency is key there. So as Sophie, as mentioned at the very beginning, the trustworthy collaboration in between all different agency, actors, and stakeholders is needed. So we cannot leave the care of those vulnerable population under the responsibility on just one single actor. So the security officer cannot be the only one who has to face and has to cope with this population, with this radical population. And the mental health expert cannot be the only one who has to be under the control and under the figure out how can be detected the signal or the factor that should be detected to realize who or not vulnerable. So the implication for policymakers, the mental health variable and condition are a very good background as the risk factor for terrorist involvement. And this implies that mental health should be remain as a focus of risk assessment, but as well should be involving in the management and supervision on this population. Especially our main role will be training the security forces and providing with the knowledge, tools, and instruments that they should incorporate into their daily practices. Next, please. Okay, what about cooperation? Next. It's clear that the intersectoral collaboration, cooperation is very important to prevent terrorist attack carried out by these radicals, individual with some mental health issues. But it's not clear what this collaboration entails, what this cooperation implies. So besides the perception of radicalization and mental health issues is different in between the mental health care and the security domain professionals. So, obviously, this affects to the intersectoral collaboration, especially because, as I mentioned before, it is not clear neither what perception different PVC professionals have about the possible collaboration with other disciplines. Even in all the paper funded, all the professionals agree that it should be somehow a collaboration between the different agencies and actors. They could never know how this collaboration should be, especially because the lack of trust and they are afraid of sharing information that they consider privacy, or they consider that they cannot be shared in between an external audience. So, as I said before, the only way to coordinate both professionals is through a very well training, both domain training, especially because so many of our actions and protocol, sometimes not always, of course, but sometimes can have negative effects on improving or harden this vulnerable population on these radical ideas. So the only way to control this unintentional measures is to reinforce the collaboration in between different agencies and actors. Next, please. Okay, so many of the papers point out that a more holistic understanding of the situation can be important for carrying a proper risk assessment and a successful coping managing of the radical individual. But the question is that the current situation that we are living right now is that security forces mainly have supporting roles, but the mental health experts are more defining as taking care of this vulnerable population. But this leads to a bad-mad dichotomy, which has a negative aspect on the collaboration and risk managing of this vulnerable population. So the improvement of the intersectional collaboration by cross-domain familiarization on the different tools and instruments that we are using from different professionals, and a mutual understanding and trust working should begin during the basis training state of professional in both domains. So it's the only solution that in all the papers that I checked provide as the best way to share that information and knowledge in between these two agencies. Next. Okay, next. I mentioned something like that. Yeah, this is very important as well. Another relevant issue that was highlighted and addressed in different papers concerned with the promotion of values, especially those values in which aesthetic identity or society and identity are built. So these types of values are established through basic socialization within the family and the school, and through a social interaction within a community. So the extent of which security forces are seen to promote these values is dependent of the behavior that they exhibit toward the general population. So therefore, the style and practice of policing make a huge difference in PCV. If police forces are perceived as helpful, professional, and fair in terms of their dealing and coping with all population, with all citizens, the people are more likely to be trusting and cooperative with us as well, PCV professional. And the mental health professional, our main role here should be to assist the security forces in further promoting these values by sharing that information they should know, especially about the detention push and pull factors, and how to communicate with them. In the next slide, I will say something more about this. Next, please. Yeah, thank you. So the communication and the way how it is the dialogue in between the PCV experts and the population is a powerful and indispensable tool on PCV work. This is very important when dealing with individuals at risk of radicalization and with those people who already are involved in extremist movements. So communication methods and skills need to be developed to train, provide by psychosocial experts, since the police officers and the law enforcement must be able to recognize the signal of radicalization and bad extremism. Then one measure from the mental health expert, of course, those who has experience in PCV issues, is to provide the proper training to the security forces to strengthen the ability to recognize the signal of radicalization, or maybe which should be the population who has to be under our radar. Next, please. This is a relevant point. This is a very tricky one. Sophie has mentioned at the very beginning as well. The question is, there is a fact, and we cannot forget it. Our actions, intervention, protocol, etc., are always subject to the confidentiality clause. We need to respect these issues. We need to respect this fact. But these privacy rules are experienced sometimes as a significant barrier for this collaboration. So the question is, we really need to look for, to figure out some kind of legal framework in order to work together, because without some exchange of information and knowledge in between different actors in agency, the professional might not have a full picture. Remember the slide that I showed you with the iceberg. So maybe we cannot have the full picture. May very easily miss the important signal that all of us should detect and should know. So we need to share in somehow the information and the knowledge that we have about this vulnerable population. I repeat, we need to build some framework and legal scenario, and especially because we need to avoid the mistake that we did it with coming in the past. Next, please. I'm not going to explain these cases because they are quite famous and we know them very well. But this is the list of the diagnosis, psychological diagnosis, that Anders Breivik has before the attack. Before, we know very well what he did it. So he has spent during his the year that he was a kid, a teenager, he spent so many time, so many years, his life in psychiatric and social institution and social service organization as well. He was evaluating in this institution organization, and this is part of the diagnosis that he received. That information was there, but that information never was shared with the security forces. So when he committed the attack that we already know, that report appeared, but was in some institution, mental health institution or social institution, that they never shared that information with the security forces, even consider that should be relevant to share with someone else. This, next please, this is another case, more recent. The next one is Jake Angeli, also known as Quantum Shaman. We know very well for the Capitol attack. He was part of the army members because he wanted to be a soldier for his very early years. And he was kindly invited to leave the army because, as you know, everyone who wanted to be part of the security forces, doesn't matter the country, in USA or in UA as well, you have to proceed, you have to be evaluated in order to detect if you have some risk because you will be having guns with you, etc. And this is the result of the evaluation that he received. So he was, as I said before, kindly invited to leave the army, and that information was in the army. But as you know, the army is not controlling terrorist issues It's another institution that I don't know how is the system in the USA, but there are different institutions, different system or unit who are dealing with this information. Once that the Capitol Act that happened, that report appears. So we cannot have this mistake right now, especially because some of the information that we really need to detect someone in the process of radicalization or someone who has mental health issues acting as a trigger to be part of this terrorist attack, this information was there. Even we don't need to evaluate those people. They have been evaluated first. Next, and I think it's the last one. Yes. What about the future? So what should be the protocol? What should be the approaches, the model in order to continue improving and updating the collaboration that right now is in the very first step? The question is, the future is artificial intelligence, something that, okay, maybe I don't agree with, maybe I'm not very comfortable with the situation, but the question is, the paper highlighted the artificial intelligence has to be the link in between different actors and agencies. But I don't know what is going to be the consequences of the artificial intelligence dealing with this vulnerable population, because we know that they are normally quite confused, quite lost, they feel insecure. So when they cannot make a difference between what is real and what is not, even it's going to be worse. They will be even more and more confused, and they will be even more and more isolated. And it's going to be quite easy to recruit them by the groomers and quite more difficult to detect them by us. When I say us, I mean those institution, organization, actor, agency that are not using the artificial intelligence in a bad way. The same with the mass media, and of course, we need to receive information, we need to ask for help, we need to have support from the social sciences, victimology, criminology, sociology, anthropology, behavioral economy, etc. Because if we are not collecting information from different sources, it's very difficult to deal with the full picture that I mentioned before of the radicalization process, especially with vulnerable population. I think this is the last one. Yes, okay, I will be more than happy to answer any question if you have some. And I remember, because we carry out the event, next please, we carry out the event in The Hague, the 2 events. I wanted to thank you with tulips. So thank you, and really hope that I keep the timing of the presentation.
So now the presentation of our next expert, Mieke Boeren, also from the Netherlands. And Mieke is a PCV training specialist on the cooperation between mental health partners and the security domain in the Netherlands, and the intentional disruption and undermining model, the IDU model. And she is going to tell us something more about getting mental health on board, and also about this Dutch IDU model.
My name is Mieke. I've been working in PCVE since 2012, when the ISIS wave swept across the country. And at that moment, I was working in forensic mental health. I had to deal with a lot of security partners who all needed information on large parts of our clients. And I stepped into a wondrous system where everybody was hiding behind walls of legislation, and which meant that lots of partners involved in PCV were acting upon half the information they should have had. So ever since I'm working in this system, and I'm trying to connect mental health partners with security partners to exchange this information. First of all, I'll talk to you about the Dutch system. As in many countries in Europe, mental health care has been privatized. It's a commercial business, and it's not being funded by government. But it, or better said, mental health just reacts on diagnoses that have been noted in the DSM. Radicalization is not a psychiatric diagnosis, which means that, first of all, a mental health sector doesn't look at radicalization as a problem where they have any stake in. So to facilitate communications between all possible involved partners. The Ministry of Justice in 2012, they invited, not forced, invited all communities in Holland to open up a central point, like a phone line, a hotline, where anyone who had concerns about anyone else, a citizen or a client or whatever, to phone in with their concerns. So the local government would be able to um, um, organize all possible information surrounding this person, and so we could have a well-informed discussion about this subject. And these subjects are all being discussed in what's called the veiligheidshuizen, the security houses. I imagine an office building where all partners have their communication lines coming in, where there's um, analysts checking out and having access to their own computer lines. So that makes it quite easy, in theory, to assemble all information. We're in 2023 right now, so that's 11 years on, and still not every municipality in Holland has been organized along these lines. That's another thing, another concern. Next, please. Next slide, please. Well, this schedule will confuse you, also because it's in Dutch, but it gives an overview of all partners involved in a security house. Just look at the colors. All these colors indicate different actors, different responsibilities, and different ways of or means of intervening in a case. So think of a police being involved, a prosecutor's department, social care, when possible, healthcare, parole board. Well, these are all examples of organizations involved in discussing cases. Next, please. Um, well, one of the problems of mental health being organized the way it is, being commercialized, is that as long you've got a problem that's been noted in the DSM, you will get treatment for that. The moment you, no, let me put it differently. The moment a person is under surveillance because of PCVE, well, again, that's not a diagnosis, and mental health will thus say, well, this is not our problem, this is a political problem. So why do we have to deal with it? Why do we have to exchange information? Why do we have to join this PCV table in the security house? Because we're not getting financed for it, which means in the end that the whole topic of radicalization doesn't get hold within the mental health providers, because they haven't got the time, they haven't got finance, they haven't any incentive at all to join discussions unless one of their clients commits a terrorist act. And that's about the only moment. And even then, the psychiatrist will, in 99% of the cases, will fall back on the obligations because of the all the laws concerning sharing medical information. So we've got to we're dealing with several blockades. Next, please. By the way, this presentation will be sent to you afterwards. In the end of 2019, I was invited by the police of the province of North Holland to try to crack this problem. We made an analysis, and first of all, we looked at the governmental organization of this province, and we could see there's 3 safety houses. There's all sorts of different initiatives of educating and training all professionals involved, but there was no overview. There was no central coordination or nothing. which was a lot of money spent on training and getting professionals ready and their antennas towards radicalization, but there was no organized or embedded participation because there was no commitment from their CEOs. Next, please. So we were invited to start up a project, and we first reached out to all majors involved in this province. Imagine this is a pretty stretched out province. All these smaller communities, they have merged and grew into larger municipalities. 13 mayors, and all these 13 mayors, they didn't agree on radicalization. They were even in sort of denial. Well, and really, excuse me for repeating this, but some of them even said, well, we haven't got that many Muslims in our community, so we don't know, we haven't got this radicalization problem. And then COVID came, and COVID was a major game changer in their perception of what is radicalization. And as bad and terrible as COVID was, it was an eye opener for these mayors, because there were people setting fire to testing facilities. There were threats towards doctors. Imagine. So for these mayors, this was an eye opener, and they all agreed. Well, it's really necessary to get mental health on board. And thus we open up some funding to reach out to these mental health professionals, because these mayors, by then we could inform them and get them to understand why mental health don't get funding for radicalization training programs. And we could also explain to them that because it's a privatized sector, these mayors, they don't have any political influence on mental health providers. They're just corporations. So next, please. So first of all, we reached out to these mayors. We got them around the table, and they agreed. So with this we reached out to the CEOs of the local regional mental health providers, and there were about 20 providers, so 20 companies, mental health companies providing mental health in that region. And we reached out to the larger ones, got the CEOs around the table. They agreed, well, yeah, you can train our professionals. So we organized 3 prevailing sessions with, first of all, middle management, got the middle management around the table, and we invited them to discuss the blockades as they were feeling from their own perspective. Because as you know, when you're discussing a thing like radicalization, when you were with several partners, each of these partners got their own perspective on the problem, but they got their own ways of addressing the problem as well, and their own responsibilities in it. And first of all, we need to understand each other's position thoroughly, and we need to understand each other's possibilities as well, and also the blockage you're encountering. So from this understanding, when we reached in these 3 sessions that level of understanding, we were able to formulate a direction, a visionary document on, well, how to proceed from here on. These 3 sessions were like preliminaries for 4 full days of training for the mental health professionals. And then we went into lockdown again, and we had to step back from the live meetings. And as you know, live meetings, the effect of live meetings is so much deeper than connecting with everybody online. Although today we're doing 1000%, of course, you understand that. But next slide, please. But these lockdowns, they were a huge setback in our development. After the lockdowns, well, we trained about 50 professionals in total. So these were psychiatrists, social workers, there were psychiatric nurses, all sorts of people who work with people, and they were all quite enthusiastic. They all wanted to get more training, and they wanted to install within their own companies, let's say, lines to communicate internally, so to get more of their colleagues involved. So if we got all basic things, we got them going, and then another lockdown, and this was like killing for everyone, killing. Um, Ever since, mental health in Holland has been blocked by waiting lists, by lack of finance, by a humongous wave of people needing mental health, especially youth. And one of the problems we encountered is that a lot of the key figures in central positions have changed their jobs. And it feels like we start again all over. So next, please. What one of the and next, please. One of the main insights what we shared within this group, and what came out of what was one of the outcomes was, when we look at radicalization and the whole all the blockades concerning the sharing of information. And what you see on the screen right now is one of the learning devices we use in our trainings to explain what's happening with a person when they radicalize, and the extent they step out of democratic values, and the way you step out of the norm and get more involved in misdemeanors or even felonies. Next, please. One of the overall agreements we made, or we could find each other, was the fact that our paradigm, our vision on what is radicalization, if we just formulate it a bit differently, we could see radicalization perhaps is one of the effects, or one of the ways where it gets visible how and why people step out of the norm and get more involved with undemocratic or even undermining, or intentional undermining was one of the words that came that was sort of coined within this group. And we all agree, well, if we just look at the effects of the behavior and the intentions of behavior, and just for 1 second forget the word radicalization, because it's so politically heavy, and it's very defining, and just stay one step before that. Just get out of this defining straight away. Just don't put on stickers on people just at the first moment. Just take one step back and look at the intention of their behavior, and that would, if we took that step back, that would change a lot of the possibilities in sharing information. Next, please. So standing on looking from the behavioral aspects of radicalization, if we're looking at what's the intention of the person stepping or stepping across legal borders, we see there's a very large drive to disrupt things. And when we take disruption as a central theme, this would open up the possibilities for mental health to share information, because it's not that political heavy anymore, and they recognize, well, disruption, well, that's a problem we're dealing with every day. So if we take this behavior central and we look at persons or groups or networks who are actively and consciously undermining and disrupting our society, and so cohesion structures and democracy or financial economic, that's all intertwined. If we change our view like this, next please, next slide please, this would open up the ways of sharing information, because the person, which is drawn in red here, like a 5-year-old, the person perpetrating all these laws, he's not really busy with the sticker he got. Am I a terrorist? Am I a criminal? Am I whatever sticker you want to put on it? And the stickers, of course, have to be put on by the public prosecutor, because the prosecutor has to know under which law he can correct this person. But the person himself, he's not busy with this stickering. So let's look at the behaviors and their intended effect. So their intentions. Next slide, please. If we change our paradigm and put the behavioral central, which is yellow in this overview in this slide, all of a sudden, all sorts of other undermining and disrupting activities become clear and become more addressable. And these, as you see mentioned here, well, they all got, in the end, they all got perhaps a different goal, but their behavior is about the same. The way they develop into criminality is about the same. So putting behavioral central opens up for a lot of partners involved in discussing radicalization. It opens up the ways, the possibilities of sharing personal information. Next, please. So by changing our paradigm, we're not looking at the involved legislation, or we're not looking at the public prosecutors' books or a set of laws he can use for terrorism, for criminality, for name it. We are just looking at the consequences of the behavior. That's being put central. As long as they're undermining or disruptive, what they all got in common is a certain drive to act as a parallel society. What we see, the effect on social level is a polarization, and as well a loss of social cohesion. Amongst these groups, we see a growing distrust towards government in general, or international institutional mistrust, or whatever. So next, please. In the end, it's all quite simple. Looking at all sorts of problematic groups within our society, or groups of persons, on the left-hand side, so within the norm, you see activism or disorderly behavior, or like brotherhoods. That's within the norm. When it gets out of hand, when it grows, when their activities grow, or when their behavior gets well, sublegal. There's as you follow the slide towards the right, you see the effects evolving from the norm to misdemeanor to felony, and this follows exactly the same circles of violence as you've seen in the first slide. So what all these groups got in common is they're closed groups. They got their own set of rules and laws as a parallel community, and they all got one hero or martyr or a leader that runs the group, and they all got the same undermining and disruptive effect in society. So by looking at radicalization as just one of the possibilities of growing violence, we open up the possibilities for mental health to exchange their information. And this is what we did in the North Holland program, and it worked. And then COVID came. So we're back to square one right now, to be honest. We've got a lot, 95% of all cases being discussed in the security houses right now has got and a mental health issue and are on the PCVE list. So the problem hasn't changed at all. And I'm really curious about all your input on this. What's your experience with it? Thank you.
Yes, thanks a lot, Mika, for your presentation. You as well, Eva, you both paint a very good picture of the issues and possible solutions, but also still the challenges within those solutions. So thanks a lot for presenting them here today. I saw in the chat that we have one question, which I will ask you, and I want to ask other people also to either use the chat or the Q&A to pose your questions, because the presenters are still here to answer them for you. So the question is, in your opinion, which would be the first step to take into account in order to build trust between the security actors and mental health professionals? So how to build this trustworthy collaboration?
Well, the experience in Holland was you have to do that at both levels same time. And maybe even a third level as well as in middle management, because you got to facilitate the professionals as well, so they can use their time to get some training. They need to, when they've got concerns about a person, they need to be able to discuss it internally first before stepping out to a third party. So in my opinion, you need to address these at 3 levels same time. Yeah.
If I might, if I add something, I will say professionalization, sorry. So for me, training is key, but training has to be first inside and then outside. I will explain. Mika says something that I fully agree with you, that you say that radicalization is not a mental illness, it's not a health problem, and it's true. So we really need to train first mental professionals and security professionals as well in radicalization processes, because if not, we have not any idea about how to deal with, I don't like to say clients, with our patients, user, vulnerable population, whatever. So even before to starting sharing that information, the information that I'm collected, that even I don't know that I'm collected with an external actor agency, I need to know how to deal with it. So from the mental health expert, we are trying right now, I belong to the Ministry of Justice, we are trying right now the people who are arriving to our institution because they have no information at all about how to cope, how to deal with these cases. And I really think that from the security side, they should do the same, because you cannot request it to a local policy who has all this information about how to detect the people who are in the process of being radicalized and how to communicate that information with your superiors or with another professional, your colleague or not your colleague, when you don't have that information. So first is the professionalization of the people who need to work in PCV issues, and then build a framework and frame legal and psychological as well about how to communicate that information. And I will think that a very good idea will be to create kind of a commission or kind of committee. Okay, committee is a better word. Multi-agency committee, kind of melting pot of different ideas and experiences. So where even if you cannot share the report, maybe you can each monthly or whatever the timing that you decide, you can share the information that you have in your hands, that you know that could be relevant to be provided for other actors. So professionalization, training, and prepare the legal framework, and of course create kind of committee of different PCV experts we are sharing information and knowledge about specific cases, about prevention ideas as well.
Thank you. And do you mean by framework like a discussion table where all parties are involved in the discussion of the cases?
Yeah. There is something quite similar in the Spanish context in prison settings. So there is some tables, quite open, and you have the prosecutor. We don't have prosecution, we don't have third degree, but it's quite similar with the prosecutor offices, with mental health professional, with legal actors, with the judges, etc., and security forces as well. Inside prison, I don't know, because I don't belong to that committee, but maybe outside prison as well. So, and they normally check every single detail of those cases that they consider that they have to be kind of monitored by the committee. So we maybe could prepare something similar in PCV cases. Will be great.
And what do you think that the success factors are of these tables where all the agencies are in trusting each other instead of distrusting each other and sharing information?
Because when you are working hand by hand with others, you stop having the bias and prejudice that we have about others, people, other professional and expert, especially because if you can feel that they are quite well expert, they have been very well trained, and they are not going to use the information that you are telling them, that you are sharing with, for any other reason that is not PCVE approaches. So that will be the best.
Yeah, so it's kind of building trust by building relationships.
The thing that we are doing here, this is the RAM idea. The best that we can share in between all our experts. Doesn't matter the side or the dimension that they belong to. So it's sharing information, of course, knowing that that information is just for us.
Yes.
You cannot use that report for any external reasons or purpose. But of course, you need to inform other sector about the information that you have for this particular case, especially when you have it. It's so sad, but we have the information. In most of the cases, of course, in other cases, we have no idea at all. But in most of the cases, is even imagining that criminology in general, every time that a serial killer or something, or a shooter case happen, there is so many information. There is so many institutions who tell you, okay, we have this file, we have the record, the neighborhood now, the information, the family tried to request help from a mental institution. So the information was there.
The thing is, and now I'm being the devil's advocate, if you have all possible information, are you still able to stop an attack from happening? That's a conundrum in itself, huh? So from a preventive point of view, in Holland we haven't had any really large terrorist attack at all, and we all are, complimenting ourselves. Oh well, this is because we've got the system going with the sharing information and everything. A month and a half ago in Rotterdam, a mental health patient who was also highly intellectual and even studying to becoming a doctor. He went on a rampage and shot 3 people and set fire to a medical institute. And in his communication was all sorts of incel-like communications. He was discussed in the safety house, but he was on the table of deranged persons, mental health persons. So if this case was discussed on the PCV table, would that have stopped him from attacking? That's a question as well.
Yeah, the level is very important. Leveling people how, okay, mental health issues doesn't mean violent persons. Sometimes yes, but not in all the cases, especially because this is the perfect scapegoat. If someone has a mental issues, it's a risky one. That's not the question. Of course, they can be, all of us. In my class, I normally say to my students, you all can come in even the hardest crime that you can imagine. All of us has the ability to kill people. But the question is, how to control these feelings and emotions that made us feel that, okay, I need to explode somehow, I need to do something because I'm not controlling my life anymore. So labeling people when they have some mental issues, or psychologically, even I don't want to say mental, psychological, because having anxiety, depression, feeling isolated is nothing about mental issues. I mean, illnesses. It's something that all of us can be in that position as well. So that's because I say that we need to train even professional in order to not label that people, because if you are receiving one of your patients and they tell you, I'm starting thinking that I need to do something, you should know, okay, this is the typical profile to be sent to a psychiatric institution. This is the typical profile to be sent or to be informed to the police officers, or even I'm doing worse, the idea. Because if they really feel that he doesn't belong to any kind of community and he is an outsider, he or she is an outsider, and even the professional is not taking care of them, we are confirming the ideas. So labeling is really relevant, as you have said, fully agree with you. I'm training the experts who are dealing, but experts in general, because the educator, youth worker, teachers, they are the ones who will detect those people. So there's some minor information that should be shared in between all the professionals who are working with youngsters, who are working with some community, as you say, the people, the irregular immigration, they're in some specific area, unfortunately. So maybe we need to work with sport expert, social workers, educators, youth workers. We need to train them and work with those populations.
Yes, definitely. So that's the next step, I think. And there were two more questions: were how to build a common language and shared values. I think you kind of answered that as well with your presentation, and as well with the training suggestions you made, Eva. And the last question is, do you recommend an institutional approach, so bottom up, or better building network at a local or community level? How do you think this should be organized?
It's not incompatible. Should be both, especially because sometimes we really need to receive the authorization of an institutional actor to share that information that we have. It's not, could be illegal. We can even have some consequence if we are sharing the information without having the request of institutional actors. So I think that the local area is key, because prevention is there. This is my opinion, but the institutional approach should be as well part of the equation. Because if not,
maybe more in creating a framework in which everyone at the ground level could work.
In putting in contact all different agency and actor, and maybe preparing that kind of committee that I mentioned before. But of course, we cannot forget the local expert and the people who are daily dealing with these possible radical individuals. Should be both. Maybe in a different timing, but should be both involved.
Yeah, there needs to be something in place before on the local level things can happen as well. Okay, thank you. I see Mika, you nodding, so I think you agree. There's another question, also a RAN mental health regular. As long as we are dealing with institutional distrust, the security cannot properly cooperate institutionally. So the question is how we solve the growing problem of generalized distrust in government and institutions. And I would like to ask you to make the connection to the topic of the webinar as well, because the topic of distrusting the government is very big.
Mika, you want to say something? Could I? Okay. I'm not an expert in this topic, but okay, connected with mental health issues. As we know, okay, I will connect with trauma, with vicarious trauma, if I may, because we know that we normally are taking care of so many people, external people, but we are never taking care of us. So we don't know what is happening in our X scenario, in our collectivity, in our groups. If I might, I will use another example from the prison context. In the same way that the inmate should be in a voluntary way decided they want to involve in a risk assessment tool. No, the risk assessment tool is quite compulsory, but in an intervention program for their rehabilitation or reintegration, we should in somehow allow the professional the same way. So we cannot push anyone to deal with terrorists or with radicalized people because they are a very particular population and maybe they don't have the skill to deal with. So we are creating kind of monster in an institutional scenario. And of course, it's the same inside of the protocol and approach that we are dealing. So you cannot be pushed to work with any specific situation and to work with any specific cases. And even if you are doing, you have to receive the information, the skill, and the tool first. And sometimes they don't have this information, this skill, and this skill. And that's because they really feel stressed and they really feel that they can be traumatized is a very big word, but we have so many cases dealing with people who has been involving in this problematic situation, and they normally end in not very good way. I don't want to give example, but we can understand what I have in my mind right now.
Yeah, thank you. And I see that Mika said transparency, and that's something that we discussed in our working group meeting in the beginning of this year as well a lot, because we discussed the network, the PSP network, so police, social work, and psychologists are involved in Denmark. And that works really well. And one of the success factors of that approach is the transparency as well towards the individual you are working with. So if the police is in contact with that individual, they say, I will share this information with the psychologist, and this is to be able to help you. So it's not from an intelligence research police study kind of way, but really to help the individual. And therefore it's really important, like a precondition to be able to do that. It's very important that you have very clear agreements among each other with the police and with the psychologist, that you use the information that you're sharing amongst each other in a preventive way, so to help the individual, and you cannot use it in a later investigation of that individual. So there are a lot of layers to be able to build that trust, and transparency. It's definitely one of them.
I'm sorry, yeah. if I can add something, because an idea came to my mind when I was hearing to you. Even if we are dealing with the same cases, our approaches, our function and role is different. Remember that we were mentioned that the security forces, they have to manage, they have to cope with, and we have to treat the people, we have to take care of them. So sometimes it's very difficult, for not saying impossible, to make understand the people that, for instance, when we are dealing with FTF, they are kind of victim as well. This is very unpolite. This is totally political wrong, incorrect, but they are kind of victim because some of the people, especially women that we are receiving, that we are treating, they have been raping so many times. They have been, they have not been in contact with the kick, etc. This is quite sad and quite frustrating for that person. So we need to really understand that we cannot afford, don't do anything with those people from the mental issues perspective. So even we will be built the prevention system. So we will reinforce that those people, because they will return to the society community sooner or later. So we are trying to make them less dangerous. So we need to work as well with community and society. And this is very important to work in between mental health professionals and security forces, especially because they are the ones who has the key and who has the instrument to explain in the society that they are the perfect scapegoats, okay, but we need to do something with them. And we will receive information even in a better way, in more useful information, if the society and the community is starting to understand from our side that they are part of the solution. So very important to make a difference in between our roles and function, but understand that this is kind of different pieces of the same pot.
Yeah, definitely. I think there's one more question in the chat. Given that there's a lack of multi-agency and that the probation officer does not always, unfortunately, have specific training on mental health, in your opinion? So in your opinion, should we discuss every radical case, so hooligans, etc., with a mental health experts? Because in their case, there's a long waiting list. And Mika, maybe you can say your answer. You answered in the chat as well.
Yeah, I think that will be best to discuss every case, but you need to be focused on what's the goal of this discussion. Are we discussing a case because of prevention, or are we looking towards are we looking towards prison sentence, whatever? So yeah, I think that would be best, but this is really, really expensive and time consuming. And then you get back to the first problem, who's going to pay for all of this? So now we're getting back to square one again. Yeah, it would be best to discuss every case, but from a prevention point of view, to prevent someone from developing into this big time terrorist, you know?
Yeah, and is there kind of maybe a light version on how to do this so it's not that time consuming and the costs are not that high?
Yeah,
Any idea about this?
This depends on personal relations between professionals and policemen, or you know, but this personal relation, that's nice, but it's really not legal. It's not legal to share information that way, and you need to be covered in that part as well. So this is contradictory.
Yeah.
I wish I had a better answer.
Eva, anything to add?
In the best universe, in the ideal universe, I will say yes, but we know how is the situation. Of course, we have a very long list of different cases to be evaluated, so it will be almost impossible to say, okay, let's do it, right? But even, of course, I really think that a psychiatrist or a psychologist has to be on the plot every time that we have that cases. But we have the help and the support as well of social workers, youth workers, educators, teachers, people who are working with the youth in sports, clubs, etc. So even they could be part of this mental health evaluation. And I'm not having in my mind a clinical approach. I'm having a more social, even forensic approach, where defining what should be the triggers, what should be the push and pull factors, and just dealing with the feeling of being not part of anything that they normally have. So this is quite easy if you know what is the process of radicalization, and maybe we really need to have this support.